officially starting or continuing our morning meeting of the House Appropriations Committee, and we're going to continue now with committee discussion. I wanted to just bring up a few things to the committee members. I received an invitation from the chair of Ways and Means, and they are going to have on Thursday at 8:30 a conversation around fiscal responses in a recession. And we've been invited to join that. And if we have enough of the budget done, I think that would be a really good thing for us to join in on. And so Teresa, if we can make that work at 8:30 on Thursday, that would be good. I just think that that's an important topic and that we're all hearing the same information. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about was, I've asked Steve, and usually when we're this close, or I mean, at the end of the budget, we get like a fiscal update. Where are we with our money? And yesterday, Maria took a bunch of our information that we did, all those prioritizations that we started about what at least we were still considering, and some of the decisions as we close out the budget. And so they are trying to get a number so we can see where we are with balance and what's available or not available and how the funds are shaking out. And we should have something tomorrow, either in the morning or the afternoon, as a first step to really seeing where the numbers are settling. And the other thing I wanted to talk about this afternoon, I want to go over a Vermont State College construct. And if somebody has a better idea, looking for ideas on the table. You know, the only idea that we had so far was, you know, we didn't do the 6 million in transportation and then use CRF money and possible language to, if it doesn't work out, to use reserves. So that's one that's been floating around in our discussions. But I'm going to put another construct on the table, and if somebody else has been thinking of a construct and you want to propose it, I'm all ears on that one. And the committees of jurisdiction, if any of you have your own priorities, constituents, stuff that we have covered in our committee, I have a whole list of CRF initiatives that either I've heard from the committee or people have written to me or we've received emails. The committees of jurisdiction, believe it or not, I'm hoping by the end of day Wednesday, tomorrow, are going to make some decisions on their priorities, their policy priorities of where additional CRF money should be spent. Obviously, the governor had a $133 million proposal in commerce. Commerce is going to be looking at a pretty large package. And so if you have some thoughts on that, make sure that you are reaching out to Mike Marcotte, because this ball is going fast. On Friday, we're going to have all our decisions made. So they have to do this work quickly today and tomorrow. And there may be a little bit of work on Thursday. Actually, I think I gave Mike until Thursday because he has so many more moving pieces than many of the others.
Did you get my email this morning, Kitty?
Oh, Bob, yes, to see what time committee was starting. Is there another email?
No, it was after that.
Nope, I haven't had a chance to look at my emails, but I'll catch up with them. But I don't see it here. I don't see anything after.
Oh, it's in
there. Yeah, transportation. Yeah, we've got to work on transportation, Bob. I think.
Do they know they're supposed to be done by Wednesday?
They may get until Thursday. They may need until Thursday because I don't think the chair is there and the vice chair is working with the committee, and
and that's fine, but my sources tell me they think they have till Friday. So well, I just need to get this straightened out, and I don't want to get into a hornet's nest over it all.
What I would tell you, Bob, if you're working with the transportation committee, Friday is when we're going to make our final
Right.
decisions. If they can make a presentation Friday morning that you're following, usually, the transportation committees, we've accepted what they have brought to us before. If you think that there's going to be pieces that are controversial, we're going to need it Thursday. So I'll talk to the vice chair as well. Maybe we can have
Okay, well,
do a three-way.
here, one other thing, if I might, may I? Can I
Yep,
ask one other thing?
Of course.
Do they know about the $6 million that we aren't going to fund?
Yes,
them
they
with?
do. We made that really clear right off the bat.
Okay,
And
because the agency didn't know, but it does.
how could they not? Their fault. They listen to us make decisions all the time. They had to have known.
All I can tell you.
And I sent Neil, I think I sent Neil an email that mentioned this 6 million was off the table. Okay, but
Well,
yes.
Neil is not the
Publicly.
agency, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Okay, well, anyway, the administration has been listening in, and we made that decision publicly on YouTube like we would in a committee meeting. So, and the House committee realized that was so. But my construct this afternoon addresses a little bit of that too. So,
All right. Thank you.
so I wanted to go back now to the stimulus equity bill, and I want to spend about a half an hour, and then we'll stop at noon and we'll see what areas of the budget are hanging out there and when our drop dead date is on those. This is Chip, if you want to, or Chip, are you here or did Chip leave? Yeah, you're here.
I'm here.
Some of these questions you may want to put in Susanna's thinking, to help guide us through some of these. And if Susanna doesn't have the information we need, we may need to bring somebody in to provide some testimony who has a real working relationship with the groups involved and can speak directly from the issues that they're facing and not from, I just want to make sure that I know we're all really trying to help, but we want to make sure that the thinking of the groups involved is the thinking that we're addressing, and that we're not trying to solve problems that maybe they don't feel is a problem. And I just want to make sure that we're addressing the situation as clearly as we can. So what I had down was we have to understand more of the timing of this bill, and I don't think that that's something we can discuss. Mike was going to look and see the timing of other bills and how long it took to stand up a program, what Susanna's thinking about standing up a program, and what her timing, what she thinks that should be. So if she could help us understand, along with Mike O'Grady, on the timing issue, because Mike has seen a lot of these other grants roll out from June, and she may have some thoughts on her own how to either expedite it or make it a smoother process. So timing is one issue, and the application process as well, and whether or not there should be any kind of deadline, if she could weigh in on that. The other piece that I'm just looking down through my notes that I took, if she could, that's something for our committee to decide. I'm just jumping around here. If she would like to weigh in on the use of resident, and our committee also needs to talk about that. If we want to start going out on a limb and changing uses of residents, which might trigger the bill really to go to policy committees if, depending on how much change we want to make. And we need to talk about the reversion of funds at the end when this is over, whatever funds are left, where we want them to go, depending on where we get these funds. and if anyone has any thoughts on areas to find funding so that we can decide an amount. So I've just jumped over a bunch of things. But I really think we need the executive director here of the new office that we created, not to make decisions for us, but to be able to provide answers to our questions. Bob, do you have a thought on this? You have a
Oh,
hand-
no, I don't.
Okay,
I forgot to go off.
okay. Marty, and then Dave, and then Chip. Marty?
I'd like to repeat a question we had the other day that I don't think is anything that Susanna Davis can help us with. And that was the thought, if there are any way to tap into tax funds, money that was deposited by this group of people into tax funding for, I know Social Security is federal and Medicare is federal and that sort of thing, but apparently not designated for that particular individual because they don't have a Social Security number. I'm just curious if we could get a comment from our tax department about, is there any way we can utilize some of those internal tax funds to help support this program?
Who has the tax department? Is that Diane? Diane, would you send would you text out either to the secretary or to oh, who's the other who answers? Oh God, his name is at the end of my, Doug Farnham.
Right. Oh,
Either Doug Farnham or the secretary. And I think that's something that's worth looking into. If those taxes that have been paid in by some individuals through payroll, if there's a way to pull some funds from the tax department, I think that's an excellent idea.
So here's my initial thinking on that, is that I don't think the tax department is holding back any general funds in some sort of form or another, and that any place that there is dollars that we think we want to identify, it would be coming out of what we have on our budget before us. Does that make sense?
That is true.
So they're not, the best that they might be able to do is to say, you know, people pay taxes, and whether or not what they get back in any kind of benefit, how would they track whether or not you get reach up, whether or not you get 3 squares, whether or not, you know, or if you take part of this, or, you know, I suppose maybe, and this is what I'll ask for, is if there are people that are paying taxes that don't file for returns. And all of that money benefits all of us because we don't pay any money back to them, whether it's in refunds on income tax or in our Social Security, that helps to bolster all of us. So, I mean, there's I mean, all of their money is not,
well,
they're not able to access it.
I'm wondering though, if they can separate out different statuses of people, like if you're married and filing jointly and one spouse is, you know, has a green card or is in the process, if they would know if that.
Why would they know that? Yeah,
Yeah, they may not know that. Would you find out if they know that kind of information though?
sure.
Thank you, Diane. Marty? is
and
it-
Diane, my concern, can I continue a minute?
Yes, of course.
My concern is, I realize now, probably federal money, if money is paid by these workers into the Social Security tax, which is a federal tax, and into the Medicare tax, which is a federal tax, it gets collected locally and then I presume sent off to the federal government. What I'm wondering is there any portion of that money that is not directly attributed to Juan Perez, because he doesn't have a Social Security number and he's never going to be able to collect on Social Security because he's not considered a citizen there. If there's any of that money that can be identified that gets passed on to the federal government, but that we could not pass it on to the federal government and we could use it for part of this program.
Will you ask?
I know it's far-fetched, but I'm just curious about that.
It'd be interesting to know the amount we collect. I mean, that would be an interesting piece too. Dave and Chip?
Yeah.
Thank you. I did have a chance, an opportunity to speak to Susanna and went over several of the issues that concern me, and I'm feeling quite comfortable now. And I don't want to quote her at all, but it's nice to have her thinking behind this. I wanted to comment, if I could, on the appropriation amount. I was silent during the first discussion. I'm happy to make a motion too, but I just wanted to quickly share thinking is from where earlier this morning, you know, I wanted to give them 5 million and more, whatever it takes to help out these families in need, as I understand it. But upon reflection, I don't think that's responsible. The $5 million estimate assumes, and I'm not sure anyone would agree, assumes a 100% take up. There's no way that 100% of the eligible folks for this program are going to step forward and utilize it. So I'm hesitant to appropriate dollars that I pretty much know are just going to sit there and be reverted at some form in the end of the fiscal year, when I'd rather have a discussion, assuming they even exist, I'd rather have a discussion about appropriating that kind of money to other very, very legitimate needs that we're all too acutely aware of. So I would think 3.5 million, trying to compromise between the 2 and the 5. I think the 5 million estimate did assume a higher number of immigrants than there might be to begin with. So with that kind of thinking, I also believe, I don't know if I should even be here in January, or even if I want to be on this committee again with many of you good people, but from where I sit, if I'm around, I would be looking at budget. If there's a massive groundswell of people for the program and we appropriate a lesser amount than 5, I would expect it to be a BAA item rather, even though I do appreciate Michael's comments about taking a while to stand up the program. So in any event, I'm comfortable with a lesser number than 5 for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I should let the committee know, when I asked for the fiscal note from Nolan and I received the fiscal note, I asked Nolan specifically if there was any way for him to use some kind of standard of the percentage of individuals who would not take up the program. And he said that there was no way for him to come with a percentage that he could put into the calculation, because I specifically wanted to know that, so that we would have as accurate a number as we possibly could. And then I did ask him about the numbers that he had. And I know there's a range with the kids from 500 to 1,000, that the ranges were there. And I asked him, you know, how much variation is there in these numbers? And he said that the numbers that we have before us with the variables, with the ranges, were based on, and he went through the 2016 and 2018 and recommendations by several groups. And he said he vetted those extremely carefully. He's mentioned it at least twice, and that he was as comfortable as he could with those being the numbers. So I'm not pushing back on you, Dave, but I did ask because I wanted to know that percentage of not uptake, and if it could be reflected in the fiscal note. And it was a specific question that I had asked.
Yeah, I don't see that as pushing back. I still don't think it's realistic that there'll be 100% uptake. His numbers assume there will be, correct? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Which is how we do any fiscal note, though, what the total cost of the program would be. I mean, I think that's how we do any fiscal note. I have Mary and then Chip. Or Chip and Mary, I don't know which direction I went in there earlier. Who's up? Who's on first?
I'll
Go, Chip.
happy to go. I take Dave's good point about, that there are other needs out there that, that we have to make decisions about, and whether we put them the full amount of the full $5 million into this program is clearly a something our committee will have to think about. I look at it differently. It seems to me that if we're trying to provide equity, that we need to have the ability to provide that to everyone who is eligible. I agree that it's unlikely that there will be 100% uptake, but my approach to that would be to try to, within a reasonable time frame, say we're going to have an application deadline, at which point we will know how much of that fund is needed, and the money can then revert to the unspent money can revert to the general fund for decisions to be made next January. And that money can then, if it's not spent on this, could go to those other good priorities that the legislature has about how we spend that money. But to not do it in that fashion creates the immediate issue, not unsolvable, but the issue of how you decide who's not going to potentially get this payment. So the straightforward way to do it is just to make it a first come, first serve. When the money runs out, that's it. But other than that, you would have to have some mechanism for reducing the payments. And to me, that, as I said earlier, gets away from the equity that we're trying to provide. So if we don't fund it at what we think is the full amount, I think it would be the responsibility of the committee to sort of put out there how we will deal with the potential for those folks who might apply when there's not enough money. So I'll leave it at that. I don't know if you want to go on to the discussion of how we fund this a little bit later, but.
Let's finish this discussion. And you did bring up the question about BAA, and in the budget, there is some language that if a BAA doesn't happen, we can always bring something forth, but we are including that possibility of no BAA, but I would find that unlikely that we don't do a BAA in January. Mary and then Bob.
What Chip said is the point that he made much better than I would have. I would like us to fund this program at the full anticipated, if it were played out to 100% expectation, because I hope we will spend it. Peter made a wonderful point the other day. I think we've all thought about the trust that we are trying to build. And I'd like to think that in Vermont, we in fact have a high degree of trust with this community. And so in fact, I think we have a good chance of it being fully utilized. And I want us to try to make that happen. And I hadn't thought about what do you do, the point that Chip's made. And that would be a real shame if we began that way. While there are always other good things to spend money for, this is one of my highest priorities. And I think we need to make sure that it is as fully funded as possible.
Bob and Diane.
I will not. I will. Where
You're
am
good.
I?
You're good. Don't touch anything. You're good. You're perfect.
I'm on?
Yep.
Oh, okay, thank you. I will not take up much time, but in the very beginning of this, I can't remember who it was, somebody was talking about how, I think the discussion's going around how many are actually going to apply. And I've got to think if they've got kids, they're going to apply. But my border town here, and I've got the only real first route in and out of the state without crossing Lake Champlain. These guys are, and there's quite a few of them, they're legal through some kind of a program. The program is extremely hard for an employer to get, by the way. But anyways, they're legal. But as I said the other day, they just are here for one reason. Now, I know a couple of them from Brazil, but they're from the Dominican. They're from everywhere. And they get paid $12 a day down there. They get paid $15, $17, $18 an hour here. And they're here for one purpose only, to send that money home. They don't care. And they don't, I'm getting to a point. They do not want to be mixed up in government. My point is, I don't think those type of legal immigrants will apply, because they have a fear of government and have a fear of some kind of complication with them being here, because they're already making, in their eyes, a glorious financial living. And they are. And their families down there are well, and everybody's doing good. I don't think they're going to risk it. So my point is, that's going to cut whatever the number is down. All from they also work in Vermont, and many of them live in New York. That disqualifies them automatically.
Mhm.
So I don't know if they can figure that in, but that's going across Massachusetts, up New Hampshire, and across Canada as well. So you're going to lose a lot of people. You're not going to pick up the whole, what was it, 5,000 they thought, something like that. I just want to say it's not going to cost that as much money as the total joint, the fiscal note was, I don't believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Diane?
Thank you. My iPad screen must be tired of me touching it. It's not as receptive when I touch it. I have to like click it a couple of times before I can turn off the mute. This is one of those dilemmas that I really do find it unfortunate about our budgeting process. Do you remember like when we have to account for per diems on a committee, and we have to add up what is the worst case scenario if they have 8 meetings and everybody's there and everybody takes mileage and everybody takes per diem. So you have to reserve in the budget $14,000, when we kind of know from history that it's maybe less than that. But we have to, as the accountants here, which is unfortunate, but we have to account for the fullness of what it is we want to support and not cut it short. And it's unfortunate because we might end up with a budget adjustment one way or the other. But I think we have to, if we've got the fiscal note for it at this much and we want to do it, we have to put it, we have to account for it. That doesn't mean that we don't watch it, see how it's doing. Was it enough? Just like we just got another CFR report. I don't know if you guys, well, anyway, I'm getting off track, but just like the CRF dollars, we're getting reports of how it's being used and what's its uptake, and we can shift it around after, but in the accounting, we have to account for it in its fullest capacity. So I'm hopeful that we can put the 5 million there and see what happens, and then we'll adjust. And I've got plenty of ideas in a lot of places that are not as fully funded that I'd like to see funded, but if we're going to do this, we better do it right. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. You did bring up a good point that I do want to bring to the committee's attention, is our faith in our fiscal notes. If we start to question or pick apart our fiscal notes, we better think about a precedent that we might set when it's used in another way and we're not appreciating a fiscal note picked apart. And Diane did bring up an excellent point that when it comes to those per diems, we know that not everybody takes them. However, they are available to everybody and we have to account for that, and then we can make the adjustment after. But making the assumption before isn't a practice that we typically have. And so if we have a real question with the fiscal note, then I think those are questions that Nolan needs to answer to talk about the validity of the note. And then a fiscal note it doesn't have to, but it should stand on its own. And when we start not having faith in our fiscal notes, then we need to think about the system that we're running under. And so I just want to be careful with how we start addressing fiscal notes. Kimberly?
Thank you. Sorry for jumping in and out here, trying to multitask and might have to jump again. But I also, what Peter and Chip and Mary have said, and Diane as well, resonates with me, because I take Dave's point, and I think it's a good one about uptake. But the way that I'm thinking about it is that goes both directions. That could conceivably, we know that fiscal year 22 is going to be really tough. We also have a number of other variables in play with regard to federal stimulus funds. And I realize that doesn't apply directly to this issue, but there are any number of things that could be coming down the pike. So my inclination would be to go with the 5 million. And I also appreciate the chair's point about the fiscal note. I think that's a fair frame up. Thank you.
Any final thoughts? I have Nolan that is here.
Yeah, Nolan Angle, Joint Fiscal Office. Just to, I guess, comment on that. Is that, as I said in the estimate, that these are estimates of how many people we think could be. I think that they are reasonable estimates. I don't believe that they're overinflated. We took a lot of mid-range. I think the point about uptake is a good one. And the way I referenced it in fiscal note was that it will depend on how well the outreach happens, how much trust there is. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces. In some programs, we can often take a uptake and we can have a percentage. And for this one, we really don't, because it will really depend heavily on a lot of external factors. So that's why I make the comment about it's 5 million to fully fund if everyone gets it, but there's a lot of variables that sort of need to be taken into consideration. So, and I capture that in the other considerations piece. So I just wanted to just sort of follow up with those comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Nolan. I have Dave and Kimberly. Or just Dave, Kimberly.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And this is not meant to be argumentative, but just to share what my own thinking is. I have great respect for our Joint Fiscal Office and their fiscal notes. They carry a lot of weight. Can imagine being on the floor and they're arguing a point and somebody says, well, the fiscal note says you're not going to go very far. However, having said that, I often believe they are estimates built upon estimates that were built upon estimates. This is not meant to be critical. It will sound it, but for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to say it. When I read our revenue forecast, and I've seen over the last 3 years how off they have been, forgive me for saying that, I see them as rough estimates done by great people working in a very complex area, making an estimate. But it's equivalent to me of a fiscal note. So I don't use them necessarily as hard and fast cement. That's the way it is. I also think I've seen, I don't have the data right in front of me, but I'm left with the impression that each year we have more and more reversions. We build programs or we make assumptions on, oh, this will be in place for a full 12 months, when it's a rollout of a new program that takes them 5 months just to hire an FTE to get it going. So we're leaving a lot of money on the table. And when we do that, we are depriving many people of the potential benefits of that. Almost done. When I think about the social equity argument that this is for social equity and we've got to get it right. Oh, I certainly agree with that. But there's so little that we do that is right. If we had complied with what the law is, the state colleges wouldn't be in the predicament that they're in. There's a 4-year waiting list for Section 8 housing programs. Granted, that's a federal program, but we augment that with other programs. You can't get into the homemaker program because of staffing shortages. You just go down the line of what we do. And I just say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Now, having said that, yes, there's integrity. If people are saying, look, we're starting a program and we want to start it out right, I'm certainly not going to argue against that. I'm just trying to remind myself to be a realist, because every dollar we allocate that will likely not get spent means somebody else won't get something that's probably pretty important. But I can easily be persuaded to go the full 5 million because my heart's always in that direction. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dave. I just do want to clarify on one point that our revenue forecast is built on estimates. And I have asked the question, and I know others have, we keep asking about this extra money at the end, and you know, are these targets off? And we are told each year for the past few years by our state economists that these are truly one-time events, and they are not comfortable with the policies in place and the activities as they are to consider them ongoing at this time, because I've been wanting to see if this is ongoing. It's happening year after year after year, and our state economists are saying that these are one-time events. So whether they are or not, I'm not an economist, so I can't, you know, I can't evaluate that work and make a judgment call, but I've got to trust the economists, and ours maybe, you know, maybe somebody has a different opinion. I don't know. But the one that we're building our forecasts on are saying these still are one-time events that they're uncomfortable stating as ongoing revenues. Okay, Maida.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say, for the record, circling back around on this issue, if we're going to be voting on this shortly, that I will vote for the 5 million. All of the rationale that has been expressed by colleagues on the committee is where my heart is. It speaks to my heart. It's where my heart was speaking to my head. And I truly believe it's the right thing to do to fully fund whatever our programs are to whatever extent we can. And I guess I just need to have faith that we're going to find a way to come up with this amount. And if it's not fully utilized, then it comes back to the general fund. We just need to make sure that that's what happens if there's money left.
And so at this point, you know, we need to find a funding source. That's always a sticking point. We do need to find a funding source, but if we're looking for a funding source, I think that we should have a target in mind. And I think that, you know, I think it was, you know, we can keep asking, you know, I think everything has been said here. And now we're just based on an opinion of where we should fall between the 2 and the $5.4 million. But if anyone has any other thoughts that need to be put on the table, or what are your thoughts now about moving forward? Mary, you have a hand up.
Well, simply to suggest that we do move forward, and I would propose that we allocate, pending finding the money, $5 million to this program. Appreciate all of the points of views that are raised, but I think we've raised them all, and it's time to make a decision. And I would propose that it be 5 million.
Pending a funding source.
Yep.
Any final thoughts or discussion? And so I think I can do this with hands if we do it slowly. Mary has put on the table that we do the full funding of 5 million. And I believe in the language that we've talked about a reversion of money not used, and we will determine where we want to revert that to. But for the matter at hand, once we've found a funding source, if we can find the capacity, the proposal is $5 million at this time. If you support it, raise your hand now. And I know some of you are on a delay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I have 9. And those oppose. Okay. Okay, so that if we can find a funding source, that's the direction that we're going to go. So I put Chip to work on a bunch of different things. And one of them is to look at areas to possibly fund this, since he's going to be heading this up on the floor and working with committees. And boy, I think the wind just took off here like crazy. Enough so that it caught my attention, so I apologize. Chip, you've been running around with a few ideas, and I have you settled on 1 or 2, or come up to 0?
Settled on, I would say no. I'm glad Kimberly's still here, because I'm going to have to phone a friend if she's willing or able. But so the area that seems most likely at this point is I never know how to describe it, but money that we had allocated for CHINS reform spending long ago. It's been 4 years.
It was in the special session of 2018. It was the 2019 budget.
Was that the 7?
Maria-
I call it the
Maria-
7 million bucks.
Yes.
Okay. Maria may be able to help. I'm glad she's here as well. So it's an unusual, at least to my mind, fund in that we sort of allocate the amount that was in the proposal each year as it goes forward. But my understanding is that there's capacity there to look to that for funding for something else in the general fund. So the reason that I've looked there is that it's a fund that we set up to fund that proposal, but it has not, the activities that were proposed that came out of that CHINS reform group have not, in large part, have not occurred. They've not gotten started. So there's one I would say major exception to that is the position of the judicial master, which was something that was worked on in the Judiciary Committee back when I was there. Kimberly was there, and that position has gotten established. The judiciary has filled that position, and so one of my thoughts about this is that I would like to see us preserve enough money within that appropriation or within that fund to make sure that for the length of the program proposal, we're able to continue to fund those positions. But other than that, I'm trying to get some information about how many of those other activities have not gotten started, or that are maybe just beginning and don't get the amount of funding that that they were supposed to have over the life of the program, because it's been a few years since it started. So that's a very, perhaps not clear, but hopefully helpful description of why I think there's money in that particular program that's not being used presently for the purposes that the legislature thought of or approved in the past. And so it seemed to me a place where for something that's a priority, if it is for us in this year, we might look to that for money. And yeah, anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. We can have some discussion. But,
You'll be back to us with
How
full
much?
clarity on if the funds are.
and I should say I've tried to be in contact with the committees of jurisdiction, particularly Judiciary Committee, about this thought to get their reactions. That would be important.
So Chip, if you reach out to Judiciary, I'll reach out to the other committee that's involved is Human Services, and I'll reach out to that chair because I know they're meeting this afternoon.
Yeah, I have done, and I've started to hear back, and we're having a conversation in the Judiciary.
Then I'll reach out to Human Services. Maida and Marty?
Could somebody just reiterate what the potential figure is? Because I heard a few different numbers in the CHINS fund.
So maybe Maria, I was just trying to look at that as we were having a previous discussion here. We have some spreadsheets, but it's not clear to me how much has actually gone out the door based on those. The original appropriation was $7 million. And I believe that, well, maybe I should just ask Maria if she can give a number before I stick my foot in my mouth. Do you have any idea, Maria, how much is
Yeah. So, I'll try to get you a final number, but we're thinking that there's about $6.2 million left in that CHINS appropriation. The original appropriation was $7 million, and it was from the tobacco fund. There was a settlement that we used to fund the $7 million. So that's the working number that we have.
We lost you, Maria.
Yeah, bummer.
So
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
Steve just called me. Yeah, so it's 6.2 million is our working number. And if there's anything different than that, I'll let you know. But that's what we think is still in that fund.
Thank you, Maria. I think that the money that was used for a study at UVM to determine some of the issues within the system in order to make decisions to move forward. And there may be a piece for the judicial master's chip. So it would leave 3.2 in the fund, and you'll hear from Judiciary. And I have sent out a message to Representative Pugh to see if she would walk through this with her committee. So should we leave it at that until we hear from Judiciary and Human Services? Unless Chip, you had another thought. Do you have any other thoughts that you would like to put on the table?
Not fully formed enough to put in front of the committee.
Okay, thank you. And so other pieces in this bill, I think tomorrow morning that we'll work on it again, or we'll work on it when we can get the executive director to come in to help us answer some of our questions and get working on how it would roll out, what the application would look like, how much detail is in the bill, how much is left up to the group, which agency we're comfortable with running the program. And I think that did we make a decision that we would do the checks would come from the state of Vermont? I think that did we vote on that? I think that was a piece that we had agreed upon to build
It
trust.
depended on the timing, yeah.
The timing piece, okay. And we're still waiting to hear how 17-year-olds were treated. Okay, and then there was a piece in here, and Marty, it may help you with part of your question. There was a shell that the executive director would be directly involved, that she shall be involved. And then there was also a shell down below that we need to sort through with her. And then the next section was a may. And I think that would be helpful with the executive director here, understanding what her role would be, and if we feel that it's critical enough that it should be a shall or a may to the agency. They may need the expertise. Okay, so I think we can set this aside for now. Do we agree in the children's piece? If we can find the full funding, I think that children's piece off the table, doesn't it? Because the children were to be funded first if there was a lesser amount. So I think we can take that off. Are you in agreement? Okay. All right, so we have about a half an hour. I need to know where everybody is on any final pieces of the budget so that any language we'll have tomorrow and no later. Bob will work on the transportation piece to determine when that will drop in. So CRF, they have all been, the committees of jurisdiction have been told Wednesday afternoon. So we can look at all the CRF funding on Thursday. If you have any CRF input, today is the day you need to get to those committees if you want individual input or input from your community or constituents. Linda, I'm sorry, Linda.
As much as I have been nudging Commerce on the CRF money, Michael is still saying the earliest that we can think about it is Thursday. So
Yeah. Yeah, he has so much that I think if we have all the other ones done, we could do Mike in on Thursday. They have the largest chunk by themselves.
Okay, thank you.
And we may not have every group come in. We may just have the memo or the language come in, and then we can evaluate based on what we see.
Okay.
You have thoughts, get those out to committee members, or if you don't say on Thursday, but I heard my community say we needed 100 million for X, that needs to happen today, please. And so when are we hearing from government operations, Maida, on body cameras and the extra police person?
Here we go. Okay. I believe tomorrow. I know they've been actively involved in conversations, at least based on the emails that I've been receiving.
Okay. And then human services, they have two pieces. Is that correct? They have childcare and they have Woodside and Reach Up. They have three pieces. Kimberly, is that right? Is Kimberly gone again? They must be.
Yeah, she scooted out again. Yeah.
Okay, I think those are the three pieces, and I'm not sure when we're going to get those, if it's this afternoon maybe, or if it's on Wednesday. And then does anyone else have a large section open? There's transportation, which Bob and I will have a conversation with the vice chair and determine how much time they need to move through those pieces. Any other large piece hanging out there that we need to stitch up? And then we'll have some language that I'm having worked on to discuss when we're gone, what the Joint Fiscal Committee has to do. So we need to look at that, and we need to look at the beginning of our language, A102.1. Maria, when do you think we can have those pieces of language to look at? Just, I don't want to put any extra stress on anybody.
Okay, so I need to remind Steve just to see what he has in mind for that. Hopefully we can get that to you soon. I just need to talk to him about it.
Okay.
I'll do that
Mary,
right
I
now.
was following some emails and you had proposed maybe moving Outright Vermont, but are you still going to propose that language or not, to move it from AOE to another department or not?
Thanks. That's the reason I had my hand raised.
perfect.
So when we were talking about the Agency of Education proposal to reduce the funding for Outright Vermont, I said, doesn't that belong over in the Department of Mental Health? And because I opened my mouth, I kind of grabbed responsibility for that from Chip, who was gracious, of course. In having had conversations with folks, and including myself, I realized that
the assumption that a grant for LGBTQ kids should belong in a mental health agency was just totally wrong on my part. And in fact, it really does belong in the Agency of Education because that's where the services are being provided. My thought had been DMH is very sympathetic to issues of trauma and abuse, and this is something that that community of folks are dealing with, but it really belongs in AOE. So I would like to pull back my recommendation that it go there. I had a really nice conversation with the executive director of Outright Vermont, and he certainly was open to it going in either direction. And he commented on the stress of, for the second year in a row, having had this grant proposed to be reduced, and that this is pretty rough on an organization, a small organization, and we really need to find it a home that values and protects the delivery of these services. I don't know how to answer that question, but I would suggest that we leave it with the Agency of Administration. I would go further to suggest that the funding that they have received for a couple of years on the order of $60,000 is the right amount of funding. I tried to the good questions that were asked about the history of this grant. It was originally a CDC grant to the Agency of Education. It began in 2013, and it began as a direct grant to the amount of $18,000. Then it was 20 and 20. And then it no longer was a grant and became a contract. And then the contract amounts moved around a bit, but they were 37 and 37 for a couple of years. Although that also then covers a couple of years. It covers different fiscal years, sorry. So it gets a little confusing, but it has been creeping up. And I think what is the most important point is that in 2013, they were serving on the order of 35 GSAs, which stands for Gay Student Alliances. So that's a group in a school. So in 2013, they were doing about 35. Today, they're doing 81. So they have increased the numbers of folks that they're serving. And I also understand that they had originally been working kind of more on the high school end of things, and they are getting increasing requests for services down into what I would call the middle school range of kids. So an expansion of services, a demand for services, and the executive director's comment to me was, and that doesn't even begin to get at the issues of the pandemic. He was just talking about what they had experienced prior to the pandemic. And we know that for isolated communities, issues of isolation, et cetera, have been even worse during the pandemic. So I would like to see them fully funded at $60,000 in the Agency of Administration of Education's budget. I guess that has to go on to the wish list, but I think it should be an AOE, and then we need to figure out how to bring it up to the 60 number.
Diane, I'm sorry, Mary, that is on our request list, and yesterday we heard it was 40,000 because there's 20 in the budget.
In the budget, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an additional 40 to bring it to 60. All right, so you're taking that language off the table.
Yeah.
And then, Maida, did you have a question
Yeah.
on that?
Not about Outright. another language issue?
Yeah, but may I, just before we move off, because Marty had asked some good questions, and did I sufficiently answer your questions, Marty, or would you like more data?
No, I think I have the data. My concern of why it needs to go from, or maybe I still misunderstand, why it needs to go from 40 to 60. Why can't it stay, or is it, they currently have funding of 60,000 somehow? Is it all
Yes.
from this grant, or does it come from other places, or all general fund?
They have a grant, I believe it is on the order of 20. I am not sure of that. They have 20 in their base. I don't know, I don't think it's a grant. I think they are proposing to spend 20. I'm watching Maria read. It's a little unclear to me. We had given them 60 last year, so we had increased it over what they had requested. The administration proposed to bring it down. And so the question on the table is, do we bring it back up to what had been proposed? And I am suggesting that we should bring it back up to 60 because of over time, the increase in demand for services. So Maria, do they have 20 in their base, and this is adding another 40?
That is what I believe. We got an email yesterday, and I just need to look at it quickly to verify that.
Adam's on. I don't know if you're with us, Adam, if you want to clarify, but I believe that the amounts have fluctuated. It started with in a previous time, it had reached the 60 maximum, and that the administration was bringing it back down to one of the original amounts at 20 to be funded at. And the proposal here is to add the 40 additional to bring it back to one of the original fundings, because there's been funding all over the gamut in the highs and lows. Is Adam there? He's probably not listening to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
It had been 60 last year. We're proposing to keep it at 60. I am proposing to keep it at 60.
Keep it.
Yeah.
Okay, Maida, new topic?
Okay, yeah. Staying with regard to the language, and just as a reminder, we will be receiving, and I'll look to Mary for a head nod here. We are expecting to receive placeholder language with regard to the mental health clinicians in the VSP budget. So it's just so that stays on the radar screen. We're expecting that from the healthcare committee.
And when do you think they're getting it? Tuesday or Wednesday? Do you know?
Today's Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is today Tuesday? We're expecting it tomorrow or today, Mary?
Wednesday. Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I'll stop asking for it then. Dave, you had some integrated mental health language. Do you know where that's landing? You are muted. Whoops, maybe I can unmute you.
I'll talk for him. We've got the integrated until he's unmuted. We received the language. I think it's now been reviewed by the administration and they're accepting it. And I think we're all good on that. Is that true, Dave? Did you hear what I said?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And let's
We
please,
are all good, and I think Maria has it.
let's take out that language and take it off the table right now then. I think then Maria can get it into the budget. As much as they can get into the budget, the least amount of work they have to do for Labor Day.
I don't know if we sent it to Teresa to put up, so other folks may not have it. Are you there, Teresa? Can you put it up?
I think we did send it out. It's 826 from Jen Carby. Is it 101? Okay. Do you have that, Maria, Teresa? You had sent it out at some point.
What's the section number?
Um,
What's the subject?
Subject
There
is
isn't a section
the
number.
proposed language for inclusion in FY21 budget.
Okay, I have the most recent version of the mental health language. Is that what we're looking for?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
Teresa, I just received that recently, sometime soon, and I'm going to send it to you.
And the system is a little slow when you're like trying to get it.
I know. Come on, you. Okay. Here you go. Okay, let me just make sure. Oops. I'm sorry. Okay. Send. I've just got to make sure I sent the right thing. Oh, my system. I know my system is really acting like a lunatic right now. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Okay. I sent you the right one. So you should have it in your inbox.
Okay.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay.
Pulling it up now. Okay. Okay, here you go.
Okay, here we go.
Can you make it bigger, please?
Yes, I will try. Yep.
You know, isn't it remarkable that we can do what we're doing? Just stop and think about this, guys.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There it goes.
There we go. Dave, do you want to walk through this, or who is it, Dave or Mary? Which one of you will walk through it?
Not me.
Did you say me, Mary? I'm happy to.
Go ahead, Dave.
We did it. Okay.
Tag
So
you're it.
this last week, what I don't, am I muted again? Can you hear me? Yeah, we went over this last week. I'm not sure of the changes here, but in any event, what they do in section A is give their rationale as to pretty much why it should be done. Trying to provide the integrated services so that mental health is treated the same as other parts of healthcare, to provide the integrated holistic system of care. And they reference the statute. Then moving on to letter B, small b here, the Agency of Human Services and Mental Health shall integrate the public funding. And this is limited for inpatient mental health services, not the entire budget, though it impacts that. This will not happen until FY23. So it gives the department some time. And I think there's a report provided to the General Assembly with an update in April. It also provides in section B for a presentation, and what they're looking for there is not the integrated budget per se, but the data behind it that will be used to measure the system. So they talk about the, including the state-run hospital level 1, other involuntary inpatient, and any voluntary admissions that occur too. It's going to include implementation recommendations to achieve the funding in accordance with the section of the Act. So what we envision them is coming into the Healthcare Committee. I don't know if they list that, or to us, and give them kind of a preliminary, here's what's happening with inpatient mental health. And the rest of the language is the HIV language. So it stops there.
Yeah, we've
I'm
already.
not sure what changes right, yeah, we've already done that. Mary, are you aware of any changes that the administration requested that the committee acquiesced to?
No, I'm not. Period. I'm not, sorry.
Okay. Nor, and Ann didn't, I don't want to characterize Ann's email. Mary, you probably saw that too. Anyways, I think they thought they had worked this out with the administration. The administration came back with what she just technical changes, so there wasn't any policy. So what we're approving really is the integration of the mental health budget around inpatient care with DEVA Medicaid budget, Vermont Health Access, and it's not until FY23, and they'll come through previous to that with a presentation with data changes. So it doesn't really cost any money. The intent is to provide better integrated services, which is a good thing. Hard to complain, hard to argue anything about that, isn't it?
And it's been a long
Any
conversation.
questions?
It's been a long conversation of treating mental health as it's a health concern. It's the health of the whole body. Any questions, Teresa? I'll back up to the screen, please. Any questions for Dave on this language? It's a conversation for quite some time. Dave, your recommendation then is to accept?
Approve this as presented.
Okay.
And to accept House Healthcare's recommendation.
Those that agree with the proposal, raise your hand. Okay. And those that oppose, a verbal no, please. Okay, we can add that in now, Maria. You'll know where it goes. If you, we can take that off the list. There's just a few more pieces of language I think that we can take care of. So Wednesday, our body camera language, I'm looking for some clarification language that I'm working on that states our intent about doing 1 year of the PAY Act. Wednesday, we'll get the mental health clinicians. And I'll also get I'm working with Steve and Maria to get the JFC construct in the first page of the language, that little technical that says after technical review or financial reconciliation, we're working on that. Diane, you had a little piece of ledge council, and I can't remember, is that saving for the Senate, or did you hear from the person in the administration so we can move forward?
Such great news.
Thank you.
Dale has sent the language off to Ruth Ellen is back from vacation, and yesterday was her first day back. So he is exploring with her and getting the administration's take on that third piece of language, and we'll see what happens. So
Okay.
I haven't heard back yet.
So tell them we need it by Wednesday, a decision, otherwise it's going to the
Otherwise,
Senate.
yeah, I'm not, if it's in, it's in. If it's not, then we didn't make it. It's not an end of the world thing.
And Diane, you had mentioned some Building Bright Future language.
I did, and I had a lovely conversation with Rep Jessup to see where that was, and she recommended that I get a hold of the new person. Anyway, I sent an email off to him last night asking, are we able to use CRF dollars, or is there a way, or would language saying that we need to get this taken care of be helpful or not? So we'll wait and see if he's there. If that's it, it's also language that would be helpful, but it's not critical.
Okay, so if we don't have that by Wednesday, that may.
It's fine.
Okay, I'll put a
It's
Wednesday
not
there.
going to change. It's not going to change the world. The other thing that I'm waiting on that I don't have an answer for, and I'm looking at my little Post-it note that sticks here that every now and then falls off, is Ways and Means is supposed to weigh in on that repeal language underneath the homeowner's rebate or the renter's rebate.
Yeah,
Some section in there. I think it's 138.
it is,
I'm
and I heard back from Ways and Means that they agree, but I want to reach back out to Janet and walk exactly through that language with me, so I know that we're both speaking.
So,
It's
right.
thing to miss, and I want to just check with her. So we're going to let that one still hang open.
Thank you. And then the only other two things I have while I've got the floor is the CRF for adult days, trying to figure out where we are with that. And
No,
I'm
that's
writing
a
on the
different-
meals.
that's a
But that's a
different
whole
bill.
nother
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's
You're gonna
round
follow-
out everything I've got open.
You've got to follow Human Services Committee with adult days, okay?
Yep, right, yep.
And then Marty.
I will probably have a small piece of language to add on behalf of the Technology and Energy Committee. They want to modify Act 137, which was the CRF funding bill 966, to shuffle some money around within the money that's already been appropriated, but it requires a modification of some language. And it's been drafted, but the committee has not officially approved it yet, but I will have that for you when it does.
Okay, good. Would you push for Wednesday on that from them, that we'd like to take it off the list tomorrow?
I think we will have it all this afternoon.
Oh, good. That's even better. Thank you, Marty. Maida.
Well, I mean, tonight, they're meeting today and they have several items to discuss, and I think they'll have it by tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Maida.
Thank you. Would you like to entertain a proposal to remove some language?
Sure. Yep. I'm done with that list. So you're going to, if you have your language out, Maida, which section do you want to go to?
It's D 101 part sub A sub 5. It's the proposal to put some money into the ERAF.
Okay, that's page 11 for some of us, and I don't know what page it is for others, but it's the number 5.
Yeah, and you know the ERAF is the that's the fund for the state to provide its percentage when there's been a federally declared natural disaster in state. It's where we find our portion to help the local communities. The feds pick up 75%, and the other 25% needs to come from somewhere, the Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund. Well, normally money is transferred to this fund in the BAA process. There's currently, as best I can figure out, a cash balance of $700,000 in the fund. And since this, adding money to the fund, as I say, normally transpires at BAA time, I would propose for consideration here that we drop that. It's $418,664, which had been determined to be an estimate of money that might be needed. That we drop that amount to our bottom line and thereby have it accessible for application in other needs that we know for a fact are existing now. Am I being clear?
You are being clear. It's the ERAF money, and we had talked about it before. It was money I thought was in Marty's, and it's actually in your budget. And this was a future. It was building a pot for the future, possible future needs, and Maida has explained it. So the proposal on the table from Maida is to not do that investment now in ERAF and address it when we know what those costs are. Are there questions for Maida? If not, if you agree with Maida, could I have a raise of hands, please? We're good, and those opposed, a verbal no. Okay, Maria, we gave you one more thing. I'm looking around. We gave you another piece that's done. Thank you. One other page I'd like you to go to, if you would go to section B 1104, it's toward the beginning. It's on page 6 in mine, but not page 6 if you have a different one. B 1104 and 1105. those are all going to get rewritten as all of our committees of jurisdiction make their priorities. So some of it may be the same, some of it will be different. So my suggestion is that we take 1104 and 1105 out and not try to find which are the same and which are different, but just to substitute the House initiatives in. Okay, I know some things will be the same and some things will be different, but would others agree that as we get the proposals from the policy committees for CRF and we make our decisions, that we would drop it in as a whole in the CRF initiative area? Is that good with everybody? So we'll address that in one swoop. So Maria, you can scoop it out and put it in as you see fit.
Okay, so we're gonna have replacement language in these two
Is it-
sections.
Yep, and it
Okay.
will be, some of it will be the same, but I think it's just easier to drop it in one spot.
Okay.
So several things coming from her committee that is left open, and I'm just looking quickly. Does anybody else have anything? I think we're really, really close being done with language.
I just have an inquiry. I think
Yes.
it was on page 11, my 11, it's D101, right underneath the ERAF. We were talking about the Public Funds Investigation Fund. Did we resolve that? I think Diane was double checking.
Yes, it was, those were the special funds and we did end up closing those out.
You did? Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So did we take the ERAF money out or not? I
Yes,
said,
yes,
Okay.
you just voted yes,
Yes.
Diane.
okay. I'll check it off on my book.
And
I
then,
better go back and pay attention.
and then there is one other place that, we'll learn about from Kimberly's committee, the use of the $2 million from the SUD funds, what they're going to do with child care there. Diane, you brought up a good one. I'll check in with Ways and Means again on that repeal language, that they repealed it and now they're removing the repeal. So the language stays in place in D there. And anything else that anyone wants to, that's keeping us between breaking for lunch? Is anyone else having a big windstorm?
No.
No, I am, wow.
No.
Yes, it's very windy in Berrytown.
Oh, not over here yet. Isn't that funny? Yeah,
Well, we're on the mountain. We're sure on a mountain.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking quickly because I want to just put this language to bed right now, except for those few pieces that are left open. The only pieces I see are the child care, the reach up, and the Woodside pieces, which Kimberly should have either this afternoon or tomorrow for us to consider. And other than that, we have a few pieces hanging out. And we are in really good shape with this budget. So my question is, this afternoon, since we really have nowhere to go until we hear from committees of jurisdiction, if Susanna Davis happens to be available, I think we're in such a tight time frame. I think that we should bring her back in if she's available and try to run through some of those questions and make some decisions on that bill. Because if we wait until tomorrow, and I can't do budget stuff now, waiting for committees, I think we're going to fall behind. So are all of you up for that?
Kitty,
Yep.
I saw that just popped up on my email, a response from Susanna Davis, which I haven't had even a chance to look at yet, but so that maybe might provide some information. I had intended to be gone this afternoon to the Ed Committee to hear about a couple of things, including their CRF spending. I could do that and you could text me if she could come in, or I could skip that, but.
I'm texting her right now to see if she's available this afternoon for our committee. And if she texts back in just a couple of minutes, we'll put her on. Who's going to be gone this afternoon? Chip needs to go to education. There's lots of CRF there, and Chip, you have some language coming to us from education. Education is looking, and I brought this up, I think earlier, like changing the number of school days due to Corona starting late September 8. So there is some education language. Chip, was there another piece other than the number of school days?
Well, there's the, not language, but there's the issue about the State Board of Ed there. That's part of the discussion today. Funding, funding for them.
And CRF funding too. There's additional CRF.
Right.
Would you ask, oh, go ahead. I'm
As far as
interrupting.
language goes, the only thing I'm aware of is about the number of school days. And I believe they're going to be talking about that too, if they haven't already made the decision.
If we could get that tomorrow, if they make a decision today, if we could get that by tomorrow, that would be really helpful too. So Chip is at 1 o'clock in education. Is anybody else out this afternoon? Okay, so if Susanna can come in, that would be good if we could move on some of our questions, but I haven't gotten an answer back from her yet. Maida has her hand up. Maida?
And in addition to that, if it can happen, that discussion, we'd still be doing the state colleges, hearing what
Yes,
the.
what times do we? Teresa, what time is Steve coming in, or Maria, are you going to walk through this? Steve, which?
I think Steve is. I don't know if he's on right now.
Do you know what time do we have him scheduled, Maria, Teresa? I don't have an agenda.
I'm sorry.
What?
I missed that. Was I supposed to schedule Steve for something? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, Steve's was going to come in this afternoon to walk, and he knows he's coming in to walk through this VSC proposal.
Oh, okay. We didn't cross communications, so.
So let's check back in at 1:15, and hopefully we'll have three things on the agenda. Hopefully Susanna will be able to work around Steve's schedule, and Steve will be in, and then if we've heard from any policy committees, we can finish up some other areas. But I mean, we're really, really close. Okay.
So what time?
Can I ask Bob something?
1:15. 1:15.
Oh, thank you.
Do you want to go off live or?
Yep. Oh, I'm done. Yeah, thank you. We
Yes,
can go
Diane,
offline.
quickly.